Welcome back, my dear friend. I'm so glad you're here in our quiet corner tonight, settled in and ready to step out of the rush of the world. Before we wander down the sunlit lane, I wanted to share a little about where tonight's fable came from. It grew out of a small, quiet moment I spent watching an old stonemason at work near a crumbling dry stone wall. She had a great pile of broken and jagged pieces of stone scattered all around her boots, a collection of mismatched, different-shaped pieces that looked completely chaotic. But with absolute patience, she picked up those scattered pieces, turned them slowly in her hands, and fit them together. Little by little, an intricate, beautiful pattern began to emerge from what had looked like pure noise. It made me think about how our own minds work, especially when the seasons shift. We wake up on bright summer mornings carrying strange, fragmented dreams, scattered thoughts, and sudden inspirations that seem to make no sense when we try to explain them aloud. We tend to brush them off as nonsense. But sometimes, those scattered little pieces are just waiting for a quiet, observant eye. Someone who can look past the confusion and see the larger, beautiful pattern holding them all together. Tonight's story is a cozy, sensory journey into the Dales. So let the worries of your day settle. Pull the blanket up to your chin, and let us travel together to Rosehip Cottage on the very first morning of summer. The first morning of summer arrived in the valley with an extraordinary golden stillness. Long before the sun crested the high limestone ridges, the dawn light filtered through the lattice windows of Rosehip Cottage, turning the whitewashed plaster walls a pale, buttery peach. Outside, the dew lay heavy upon the clover, every grass blade holding a single, sparkling bead of moisture that caught the pale sky like a tiny, grounded star. The air drifting through the open kitchen window was cool, sweet, and crisp, thick with the scents of wild honeysuckle, damp river moss, and the fresh green promise of the new season. Inside the kitchen, the morning routine unfolded with a quiet, contented harmony. The hearth burned with a small, cheerful bed of fruitwood embers, giving off just enough gentle warmth to take the edge off the early chill. Rosco stood by the long pine table, wearing his soft wool waistcoat, his eyes bright and restful as he poured fresh spring water into the large earthenware teapot. Beside him, Millie Moonbeam was carefully arranging a basket of warm barley scones, wrapped in a clean, checkered linen cloth to keep the steam trapped within. Berry and Carrotina sat upon their tall wooden stools, their ears tilting lazily toward the soft breeze outside, their downy paws cradling their stoneware mugs. "There is something very special about the air on a midsummer dawn," Millie Moonbeam murmured, setting the basket down in the center of the table. "It feels as though the whole valley is holding its breath, waiting for the day to begin." "I think my mind was trying to make sense of the turn of the season while I slept," Berry said with a soft chuckle, taking a careful sip of his tea. "I had the most bewildering dream last night. I was standing in the middle of the lower vegetable patch, trying to harvest carrots, but every time I pulled one from the damp earth, it wasn't a root at all. It was a cluster of bright golden fruit, smelling of honey and summer heat, growing upside down beneath the soil. Carrotina set her mug down with a quiet rustle of her sleeve, her dark eyes lighting up with surprise. "That is astonishing, Berry, because my dream felt just as strange, though entirely upside down from yours. I dreamed I was standing on the very crest of the parish hill during a great summer gale, but instead of being blown away, thick, soft cables woven of dark, damp earth wrapped gently around my ankles, holding me anchored so safely to the ground that the wind simply brushed past me like a silk scarf." Millie Moonbeam leaned her chin on her paws, her ears sweeping forward in quiet wonder. "It seems the night was full of curious stories," she said thoughtfully. "I dreamed I was swimming through the upper branches of the ancient parish oak, but the tree wasn't made of wood or stem. It was a vast floating ocean of soft green light, and as I moved through it, it whispered names I had almost forgotten." The three turned to look at Rosco, who was leaning against the edge of the scrubbed pine table, listening with a gentle, thoughtful smile resting on his face. "And what about you, Rosco?" asked Carrotina softly. "Did the midsummer night bring a dream to your pillow as well?" Rosco nodded slowly, resting his hands over his waistcoat. "It did," he replied. "I dreamed I was sitting quietly in the centre of the dark woods at midnight. In my lap rested a single perfect sphere of polished amber that glowed with the light of a midsummer sun. It was so warm that as I held it, the deep frost resting beneath the winter soil dissolved, sending tiny green shoots climbing up toward the stars." Berry let out a long, quiet breath, looking down into his tea mug. "Golden fruit beneath the earth, anchors of soil, oceans of green leaves, and a warm star in the dark," he mused, an amused, gentle smile touching his lips. "It sounds like absolute nonsense when spoken aloud over breakfast, doesn't it?" "Perhaps," Rosco said gently, looking out the sunlit window toward the winding village lane. "Or perhaps our minds were simply gathering pieces of something larger while we rested. But I hear that down at the sunlit quarry near Pebble-Brook, an artisan has set up her workshop for the summer. They say she works in stone, glass, and mortar, and that she has a rare gift for finding the shape in things that seem scattered." Millie Moonbeam smiled, reaching for her linen bonnet hanging by the door. "Then let us take our morning walk down to the river," she said warmly, "and see what the day has to tell us." The four companions stepped out into the bright midsummer morning, leaving the front door of Rosehip Cottage unlatched, so the cool breeze could drift through the hall. The air was rich with the scent of summer, a sweet blend of flowering clover, dried timothy grass, and the earthy perfume of river mud warming beneath the rising sun. They walked in single file down the narrow winding dirt track that followed the curve of the parish stream. The tall feathery fronds of Queen Anne's lace leaned over the lane, brushing softly against their waistcoats and woolen trousers. Bees hummed lazily among the purple thistles, and high above in the cloudless blue sky, a skylark hovered, filling the silent dale with a long, shimmering song. Rosco set a slow, comfortable pace, his boots sinking gently into the dusty path. Behind him, Berry carried a small canvas satchel filled with wild mint leaves they had gathered along the bank. while Moonbeam and Carrotina walked arm in arm, admiring the yellow buttercups sparkling in the high meadows. As the lane sloped gently downhill toward the river bend, the sound of trickling water grew louder. The trees thinned, revealing the ancient limestone quarry at Pebble-Brook. Decades ago, the parish stonecutters had worked this sheltered hollow, leaving behind smooth stepped terraces of pale grey rock that were now covered in soft cushions of wild thyme and green moss. In the centre of the quarry stood a grand open-sided timber barn with a roof of cedar shingles. High in the rafters, swallows darted silently to and fro, tending to their nests in the shaded eaves. This was the studio of the Mosaic maker. As the bunnies approached the barn, the unique sense of her craft drifted out into the warm air. The sharp, clean smell of freshly broken slate, the sweet aroma of pine resin, and the cool, damp perfume of wet lime mortar sitting in open oak troughs. All around the studio floor lay hundreds of wooden trays, each neatly organized by color, texture, and origin. There were smooth, round river pebbles worn flat by centuries of running water, shards of terracotta pottery baked to a warm brick red, fragments of forest green bottle glass smoothed by the sea, thin ribbons of dark blue slate, and pieces of polished amber that caught the morning sunlight like trapped drops of honey. Sitting upon a low wooden bench near the centre of the workshop was the artisan herself, a thoughtful, silver-haired badger named Clara. She wore a heavy canvas apron over her dark linen dress, her sturdy paws dusted with fine white stone powder. In her right hand she held a tiny hammer with a copper head, which she used to trim the edges of small stone tiles with quiet, practiced precision. Hearing the soft rustle of dry grass, Clara paused her work and looked up. Her dark, kindly eyes crinkled at the corners as she saw the four friends standing at the open threshold of her barn. "Good morning to you, travellers," Clara said, her voice a low, soothing rasp that sounded like smooth river stones turning gently in a current. She wiped her dusted paws on her apron and offered a warm nod. "Welcome to Pebble-Brook. The morning sun is bright, the lime is fresh, and there is plenty of cool shade under the rafters. What brings the folk of Rosehip Cottage down to the quarry today?" Rosco stepped forward, taking off his felt hat and holding it loosely against his tumblington. "Good morning, Clara," he said gently. "We came to see your work, and perhaps to share a few scattered pieces of our own." Clara motioned warmly toward a row of low, weathered wooden stools, lined up near the edge of the workshop. The four companions sat down comfortably, their boots resting upon a bed of fine white stone dust that felt soft against their soles. "You speak of scattered pieces," Clara said, setting her copper hammer down upon a felt mat. She leaned her forearms on her knees, her dark, attentive eyes settling on the group. "In my line of work, nothing is truly lost or meaningless just because it arrives in broken fragments. A single stone looks like nothing on its own, but when you give it time and place it beside its neighbours, it finds its purpose. Now, tell me, what pieces have you brought down from Rosehip Cottage?" Berry leaned forward. We woke up this morning carrying very peculiar dreams, Clara. Mine felt so vivid, yet completely back to front. I dreamed I was harvesting carrots, but deep underneath the damp earth, I found clusters of golden fruit growing upside down, heavy with the scent of summer heat. Clara nodded slowly, her ears tilting thoughtfully as she absorbed the image. Golden fruit growing deep in the dark earth, she murmured, her voice carrying a quiet, reflective cadence. A wonderful piece. And what about you? Carrotina spoke next, her voice light and earnest. I dreamed I stood upon the parish hill during a great midsummer gale, but instead of the wind carrying me away, thick, soft cables woven of dark, damp soil wrapped gently around my ankles, holding me anchored so safely to the ground that the fierce wind simply swept past like a soft scarf. Deep roots holding you fast against the storm, Clara mused, a soft smile touching her dark nose. A solid, unyielding anchor. Go on, little ones. Millie Moonbeam smoothed her apron over her knees. My dream was high above the ground. I was swimming through the upper branches of the old parish oak, but the leaves were a vast, floating ocean of soft green light, whispering forgotten names as the breeze moved through them. An ocean of green leaves reaching into the wide sky, Clara said softly, her eyes glinting with understanding. Finally she turned her gaze to Rosco, who sat quietly at the end, his paws resting on his knees. "And you, Rosco?" she asked gently. "What did the night bring to your pillow?" "I sat in the middle of the dark woods at midnight," Rosco said softly. "In my lap rested a sphere of polished amber that held the light and heat of the midsummer sun. It warmed the soil so deeply that all the lingering winter frost dissolved, allowing tiny green shoots to climb up toward the stars." For a long moment, the sunlit barn was completely still, save for the soft rustle of swallows in the cedar rafters and the gentle trickle of Pebble-Brook flowing outside. Clara sat in quiet contemplation, her gaze drifting over the trays of river pebbles, coloured glass, and dark slate. Golden fruit beneath the soil, dark roots holding fast, a canopy of whispering green leaves, and a warm heart of amber that wakes the sleeping earth, Clara said softly, rising from her stool. "You call these dreams nonsense, my friends, but they are not nonsense at all. They are the oldest story the valley knows." She walked over to a workbench where a heavy hand-carved oak frame rested, 4 feet across, lined with a smooth bed of fresh, damp lime mortar that smelled of cool river clay. "You have brought me the pieces," Clara said, picking up a pair of wooden tongs and selecting a smooth, dark piece of slate from a tray. "Now let us build their true shape together." The afternoon sun rose high over the limestone quarry, bathing the open timber barn in a warm golden glow. A gentle breeze drifted down from the parish hills, carrying the scent of wild thyme into the workshop to mingle with the clean, earthy aroma of damp mortar and cut stone. Clara worked with a slow, rhythmic grace, that held everyone in quiet fascination. She did not rush. She picked up each stone with practiced care, turning it over in her sturdy paws, feeling its weight, texture, and contour before pressing it into the bed of lime mortar. "Every piece has a side it wishes to show the world," Clara explained softly, as Rosco and Berry helped sort a tray of river-washed pebbles by shade. "Some are rough and dark, meant to bear weight. Others are smooth and bright, meant to catch the sun." To represent Carrotina's dream of dark, grounding anchors, Clara began at the very bottom of the broad oak frame. She selected heavy pieces of dark blue slate and rough charcoal-coloured granite, weaving them together into thick, sprawling roots that dug deep into the lower corners of the mortar. They looked ancient and unyielding, carrying the quiet strength of the deep earth. Next came Berry's dream. Within the dark soil beneath the roots, Clara embedded smooth, rounded pebbles of yellow quartz and polished amber. When the sunlight filtered through the roof eaves and struck those stones, they glowed from within, like hidden clusters of sweet, sun-ripened fruit nestled safely underground. At the very center of the trunk, where the roots met the sky, Rosco stepped forward. Guided gently by Clara's paw, he picked up a single circular piece of warm, translucent amber that held the golden hue of midsummer. With a soft, steady pressure, Rosco pressed the amber stone directly into the heartwood of the tree. The mortar gave way slightly, holding the warm stone snug and fast. It sat there like a sleeping sun, radiating a deep warmth through the center of the design. Finally, for Millie Moonbeam's dream, Clara invited all 4 companions to help place the canopy. For hours, as the afternoon shadows lengthened across the quarry floor, they set hundreds of tiny ocean-green glass shards, sea-smoothed emerald porcelain, and polished moss agate tiles into the upper branches. The tiles curved and overlapped in a gentle, sweeping arch, creating a vast, rustling crown of leaves that seemed to reach straight up toward the heavens. By the time the sun began to dip toward the western ridge, painting the sky in soft shades of peach and lavender, the bed of mortar was completely filled. Every gap had been thoughtfully met. Every scattered fragment had found its home. Clara took a soft, damp linen kerchief from her apron pocket and began carefully wiping away the thin haze of stone powder resting on the surface of the tiles. As the damp linen passed over the stone, glass, and amber, the colours suddenly sprang to life with astonishing vibrant clarity. The 4 companions stood side by side in the quiet workshop, catching their breath in soft wonder. What had begun as 4 strange, isolated dreams over morning tea had transformed into a single, breathtaking masterpiece, an ancient, glowing tree of life, rooted deep in the dark soil, bearing hidden fruit, held by a warm amber heart. The twilight crept gently into the quarry, turning the high limestone cliffs a soft, dusky violet. Swallows swooped quietly through the rafters as the cool evening air began to settle over the timber barn. A single pale star appeared in the darkening sky above the open roof, casting its gentle light down onto the wide workbench. The mosaic was complete in its form, yet at the very intersection where the main trunk divided into the high branches, a small circular recess remained empty in the damp lime mortar. Clara reached into her apron pocket and drew out a small velvet-lined wooden box. She opened it to reveal a single smooth river pebble, perfectly oval, taken from the deepest pool of the parish river, where the water ran clear over ancient limestone. It was soft grey, with delicate silver-white veins running through its centre like tiny branches of light. "Every mosaic needs a final keystone," Clara said softly, looking at the four friends gathered around the workbench. "The piece that binds the roots below to the sky above. Rosco, will you do the honours?" Rosco took the cool, smooth riverstone into his paw. Moving with slow, reverent care, he placed it into the empty centre of the trunk. With a gentle, firm press of his thumb, the stone settled into the bed of mortar with a soft, perfectly flush fit. As the final piece met the surrounding tiles, a profound sense of completeness filled the quiet workshop. The scattered dreams were no longer separate thoughts drifting in the dark. They were joined forever in a single, harmonious story of the Tree of Life. Clara took a small oil lamp from a shelf and struck a match, placing the warm golden flame beside the frame. The amber heart glowed like a cozy hearth. The green glass canopy shimmered like dew on summer leaves, and the dark slate roots appeared to hold the entire creation fast to the earth. Clara traced her dusted fingers along the lower edge of the heavy oak frame, where old hand-carved lettering had been smoothed by time and oiled to a dark sheen. This frame was carved by the first stone cutters who worked this quarry 200 years ago, Clara murmured. They left a piece of wisdom carved into the wood for whenever the villagers forgot how deeply they belonged to this place. Read it together, my friends. Millie Moonbeam leaned in close, her soft voice reading the ancient words aloud. Roots in the dark earth, branches in the summer sky. Though our dreams drift scattered, we are all tied to the same living wood. Berry let out a long, quiet sigh of contentment, his ears resting gently against his back. "It wasn't nonsense at all," he whispered softly. "We were all just dreaming different parts of the same home." "That is the secret of the valley," Clara said, offering a warm, tired smile as she set her tools away for the night. "We think we walk alone with our strange thoughts, but under the surface, everything we care for is connected. You brought your scattered pieces to the quarry today, and together we found where they belong, in the Tree of Life." The walk back to Rosehip Cottage was bathed in the quiet silver magic of the midsummer night. The moon rested high above the limestone ridges, shedding a cool, radiant glow over the winding lanes and quiet meadows. The air was soft, heavy with the perfume of night-blooming jasmine and damp meadowsweet rising from the riverbanks. Rosco, Moonbeam, Berry, and Carrotina walked side by side in peaceful, comfortable silence. Their steps were light and unhurried, their minds filled with the quiet satisfaction of the day. The scattered thoughts that had puzzled them over breakfast were now rested and whole, gathered safely into the ancient story of the valley. When they reached Rosehip Cottage, the small stone home looked infinitely welcoming beneath the starlight. Rosco pushed open the front door and they stepped across the smooth oak threshold into the soothing, familiar quiet of the hallway. The kitchen held the gentle, lingering warmth of the day. Moving with slow, quiet movements, Moonbeam poured 4 small mugs of warm chamomile and lavender tea, sweetened with a single drop of wild clover honey. They sat together around the scrubbed pine table, sipping the sweet, floral warmth in total tranquility, feeling a deep, restful heaviness settling into their limbs. One by one, as the small mugs were set aside, the companions said their soft goodnights and retired to their cozy rooms. Rosco stepped into his small, quiet bedroom under the eaves. The lattice window was latched open just an inch, letting in the faint whisper of the summer breeze through the garden apple trees. He pulled off his wool waistcoat and folded it neatly across the back of a wooden chair. He climbed into his soft, high bed, settling deep down into the cool, crisp linen sheets. He pulled the heavy quilt of soft goose down all the way up over his waist and chest, tucking it comfortably right up under his chinnigan. He rested his head upon the soft, feather-stuffed pillow, his long ears relaxing completely against the fabric. Outside, the valley lay fast asleep under the wide summer sky. The river flowed gently over the smooth pebbles at Pebble-Brook. The Mosaic rested quietly in the barn, and every leaf, root, and branch slept in total harmony. As you let your own eyes close now, and you sink deeper into the absolute comfort and support of your own bed, let these gentle thoughts wrap around your mind. My day is beautifully complete, and my mind is at rest. My scattered thoughts have found their quiet, peaceful place. I am safely anchored, surrounded by warmth and deep comfort. I give myself full permission to let go of every lingering thought. All is connected. All is complete. And all is well. I am ready to drift into a deep, beautiful and unbroken sleep. Let the slow, lazy rhythm of the midsummer night carry you deeper into the quiet dark. The lane is walked, the tree is complete, the valley is fast asleep, and you are entirely safe. All was snug, all was well. Night night.